Good afternoon. This is Dr. Bill Wyatt again, and I'll be talking to you about retention and how it can actually fool you. This is a pretty neat video, and I'd like to go over it with you. The retention of the teeth can really fool you, and it can cause the jaw to be pressed distally, and that can create a jaw joint problem. So I want you to watch along with me, and let me show you how this could happen. So anyway, here's a young lady who had her teeth straightened by a prominent orthodontist in the Metroplex, and after the teeth were straightened, he put her in a retainer, and she had a TMJ problem. And here is the reason why she had this TMJ problem. The guy did not finish the case properly. He didn't put the proper amount of torque in these teeth. They should be coming out like this. And if he did, the whole bottom jaw, the jaw could come forward and relieve the pressure on the temporomandibular joint. But the teeth were torqued in like this. And if you move the teeth out, as you move them, the roots are in the bone, and that pulls the maxillary teeth forward. And now you put the lower teeth into the interdigitation, and the lower jaw is further forward, and you don't have any pain like that, except this could close up because of the lack of a bite plate on the retainer. So there are several things about retention that a lot of orthodontists even don't understand and don't know. I went to a guy's an international speaker on TMJ problems. He and an old surgeon covered the country with it, and I heard him 3 different times. On the first time, he just said orthodontics causes TMJ problems, and I thought the thing, that's not true. Orthodontics doesn't do it, but it's the way it's retained and the way the person treats the teeth that causes the TMJ problem. All right, so let's look at the teeth from the side. Actually, you could have opened it a little bit further there too. Now, from this side, you can see, put the teeth in the right spot in here, but these teeth are lined like that. I mean, these teeth ought to be out this way, and if they were, these points would be further forward, and then the jaw could come further forward, and that would relieve the condyle back in here where it's being pressed backwards and causing the TMJ problem. And the guy was a prominent orthodontist. Now, this is not Dr. Henry, was a guy that was kin to this lady, and she went to him, and he had been in one of our classes, so I sent her back to him to correct this problem, and he did, and the jaw joint stopped. It wasn't that he had extracted a tooth that was causing it. It was the retention and also the way that he did not torque the teeth properly. And I'm going to show you some things about torquing them like that in a minute. Now, from the bottom side, it didn't look all that bad from the palate, and here's the other. But when you look at it here, these teeth look like they just need to be further out. You see, they need to come out like this, something like that. And that would bring everything else forward, and the jaw would come forward too. But it wasn't only this, it was the retainer that they wear a lot that causes the pain also. So, excuse me. All right, I sent him over to Dr. Henry, who is the kin to this young lady, and he went in and put braces on there and put some proper torque in it, and opened the bite a little bit and put a bite plate and a retainer in there, and the TMJ problem went away. Now the thing is, it was a prominent orthodontist, and he didn't realize what was causing the problem. In other words, she went back to him and says, oh, well, the orthodontics shouldn't cause any problem with it and just let it go at that. And that's not right, really. Now, let me explain something about torque in there, like the pre-torqued equipment that the brackets and things that we have is pre-torqued. There's a certain amount of torque when a tooth's out like this, that the torque in the bracket would be here. So if you stuck a rectangular wire in there, it wouldn't have to do anything to the tooth, you see. This bracket would have the torque in it. So you have a tooth that is not torqued enough. It's down in like this, and the bracket's coming out kind of this way. Now let me erase that and start over. If you have a tooth that's, says, well, that's not torqued right. Torqued down too much, that's not right. The torque would be headed down, and now you take a straight wire and put in there, then it would torque this tooth. Maybe I can explain it with my hands better. Like if the torque in the tooth was sticking out here, and you just put a straight wire in it, but if the tooth is this way, the torque in the bracket would be down here, and then you'd have to bend the wire and put it in the bracket and pull it up like this. Now, the problem with that is that the closer you get to the right torque that the arch wire has in it, the less and less the force becomes, and so it looks like you're going to take forever to get the tooth torqued to that part, which might be true. You can go in and put more torque into the tooth. In other words, you can put enough torque in there that it'll make that tooth come out in a hurry, and then you can take the torque out of the tooth. But the brackets are pre-torqued, and a lot of people think they can just get a piece of straight rectangular wire and put in there and it'll put the teeth correct. A lot of times it does, simply because the tongue, if you get somebody functioning correctly, the tongue pushes up as you swallow and presses on the teeth, and the cheeks and the lips catch the teeth, and you have a self-torquing mechanism in your body if you don't function improperly. If you breathe through your mouth and you keep your mouth open, you've got to breathe over your tongue, and so your tongue stays in the bottom arch, and it widens the bottom arch out more than it should be, and so people get into cross bites simply because they breathe wrong. And that's hard to get across to people, that your breathing can actually cause the malocclusion. Okay, so the case was not torqued properly, and they're like this, and when you torque them, it moves them forward. The roots are in the bone, and as the teeth move forward, the roots are pushing back against this bone up here, and that makes a crown out, and as you put the crowns together in here, that pulls everything to the front, and this just wasn't done right. So you need to understand that feature of torquing and finishing your cases. If you torque it correctly, that's the way it should be. All right, now here you get to look at it again. You see how these teeth are? They ought to be out like that. If they were, they would pull all this further forward, and that would let your jaw come further forward, and that would take the condyle off of it would be pressing on the retrodiscal tissue so much. And that's one of the big reasons. And there's one more here. You see, he opened the bite more, and the teeth are brought up against that, and he put a bite plate on the retainer, and she doesn't have any more jaw joint problem. If she stays with that, it won't hurt. Okay, here's the other. Looking at it after he finished it, you can tell how it did. All right, he made a proper retainer for her. Or anyway, this is the proper retainer. You just make I've got a video making a retainer, so I don't want to spend much time on that. But anyway, he made the retainer with no arch wires or clamps going across the teeth. You put those on there and you bite on them, and the teeth move another way. And then if you put the retainer without a bite plate, the bite can deepen, and the lower teeth pushing up against the upper teeth, and the upper teeth are they have a covered, they're aligned like this, and the lower teeth come into them. Well, they tends to move the jaw back also. So that can happen in retention where you didn't put the bite plate in the retainer. All right, let me see. Here you took this out, and it looks good, and she doesn't have any TMJ problem with it. But you see the difference in the torque that the teeth have, and also the difference in the retention. He put a bite plate retainer in there, and here's another sneaky thing that can happen in there, that this is another way that orthodontics can cause a TMJ problem. This is just, we had one back there, and then this will be another one that they have. Now, if you take a class 2 case, that's where the upper 6-year molar is out in front of the lower, and these lower teeth would be back, and you'd have a big gap in the front part of the mouth right here. Now, you start pushing this upper arch back to correct the class 2, and you can do that by wearing class 2 elastics or rubber band that's pulling this back and it's pulling this forward at the same time. Or you could wear a headgear up in here, fitting in there, that was pulling this thing back completely and pushing it. And you can come down with a TMJ problem. And then a lot of, some people that were pretty smart orthodontists back when this took place said that headgear causes TMJ problems, or class 2 elastics can cause TMJ problems. Well, that's ridiculous. They don't cause it. They just push on the teeth, and moving the teeth back, you move the upper teeth back, and if you have deep interlocking cusp, you get a tremendous force on this right here, and the occlusion will shove the mandible back, and you shove the mandible back, you shove the head of the condyle back into that retrodiscal tissue. And I had a young lady who I was doing, this was years ago, and she had no TMJ problem, and I started her, and she was class 2, and I had probably class 2 elastics on it, or else headgear, or maybe both of them. And I was wearing this, and she came down with a lot of TMJ problems. Now, everybody doesn't do that because the head of the condyle may not be that close to the tissue, retrodiscal tissue. But this one was. And I sent this young lady to Dallas to the best guy I knew in the country on TMJ as Dr. Weldon Bell, who had written 2 books on it, or 3 books, and really knew a lot of the details in the joint thing. And I said, am I doing something that causes this TMJ problem with this young lady? And Dr. Bell wrote me a nice note back and said, Bill, I don't see anything that you're doing that could be causing the TMJ problem. So I just continued with the treatment. And after a while, the teeth get pushed up on the top. And then all of a sudden, they're going down another way, and it's pushing the jaw back in that direction, and it quit bothering her. Now, a lot of people have people wearing class 2 elastics, and they think they're not wearing them, but they're blocked off by this force here. Now, if you don't want this to happen, or a way to keep that from happening, let me see, I got 2 or 3 little pictures in here between that. Now, when it gets on this side, you see the occlusion is hitting, it forces the jaw in a forward direction. So I've been treating people and trying to get the class 2 corrected, and it seemed like it just wouldn't do it. And then all of a sudden they came in and they were class 1. Now that happens, the point goes over this part, and now the occlusion is pushing the jaw forward, and you can be pushing this backward, but it'll correct this thing in a hurry. And if they've got deep interlocking cusp like that, that holds the jaw forward in a lot of class 2 treatments that you might do. Now to get away from that, or if you're treating somebody for class 2 and they're locked in class 2, if you put just a little bit of acrylic down in the occlusal surface of the teeth, then you can push on this all you want to, and it won't move this back. But you got to take it off to get it to moving forward too. But when you get over the point, in other words, you get this back over here, take this off, and now the occlusion will help you correct the class 2 problem. And so these are some subtle things that create TMJ problems, and it's related to orthodontics or anything else you're doing in dentistry. And now this is something I don't like, is retainers with these wires going around like that. See, that doesn't let these front teeth move forward at all. And they put this in the mouth, and they bite on these things, and the teeth can't come to the final point of retainer, of where your final movement of the teeth is where they come together and kind of wear in properly. You bite on these, and it moves in one way, and you take it out, it moves another way. So I don't like that part of the retainers that are generally used. Now the 3-to-3 retainer on the bottom is good. It holds the teeth in line as long as you don't have any big problem there in the front. That's all right. Now, in the retention of this young lady that we showed, they had one of these retainers with that bar going across the front, and the retainer part of it ran down here, and it ended up here. And so the lower teeth had this bar on them, and they couldn't go backwards, and these couldn't go forward, but they had a gap in here, and if it was deep bite at all to start with, in other words, if these teeth were up in here somewhere to start with, and you opened it up, then they're going to try to close down again. And as they close down, they're sliding up a inclined plane, and they make this sore, or just the actual fact of closing up here pushes the jaw back, and people come down with TMJ problems. And these are some of the reasons that the guy that was teaching on taking care of the TMJ and all this, the half of the cases or more than that he showed they were in orthodontics and were in retention. And he just said orthodontics creates joint problems. And I went up and talked to him then the second time I heard him, and I told him what really caused it. It wasn't the orthodontics, but it was the way it was done. And then he put that in his book, and I wrote an article about it, and I had to quote him. He forgot who told him. I came back the third time, and he had that was in his lecture. So anyway, I'm passing this on to you. We prefer doing let's go back. See, there's nothing going across the occlusion, so the teeth fit together and wear in like that, and you've got a bite plate on it, and the bite plate comes down and kind of fills in right here. Now this, as long as they wear it, this cannot go down. It won't go down. And then if it's not there and this goes down, it tends to push the jaw back, and you have TMJ problems with that. So I hope you get something out of this. It's a little more complicated than just straightening out teeth, but anyway, it's the truth as far as I know. So I'm going to hush and hope you get something from this and join our group and subscribe to our orthodontics, I guess I'd say. We've got over nearly going on toward 5,000 people in it, and I hope you will join our group. Now, so I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll close this out now. If I can get this over here.